A continent of ice hides our planet's greatest secret. Beneath miles of frozen wilderness lies a mystery so profound it could shatter everything we know about the human story. Could the secrets hidden under Antarctica rewrite human history? By the end of this journey, you will possess a complete picture of the evidence, from ancient maps to modern radar scans, that challenges our understanding of the past. We will examine charts that depict lands free of ice thousands of years before they were discovered, and explore whispers of structures preserved in the deep freeze. What do you believe is waiting to be found under all that ice? That map is known as the Piri Reis map, drawn on gazelle skin in the year 1513. Its creator, the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, wrote notes upon it claiming he compiled it from about 20 source charts, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. The map shows the coastlines of Europe, Africa, and the eastern shores of South America with remarkable, though not perfect, accuracy for its time. But it is the landmass at the bottom of the parchment that ignites the firestorm of controversy. To the south, the map depicts a continent with a detailed, jagged coastline. For centuries, this was considered a curiosity, perhaps an imagined southern land. Then, in the mid-20th century, a professor named Charles Hapgood and his students made a startling comparison. They overlaid the Piri Reis map with modern projections and argued that the mysterious southern coastline matched with uncanny precision the subglacial topography of Queen Maud Land in Antarctica. The key detail, they claimed, was that the map showed this land free of its immense ice cap, a condition that, according to conventional geology, last existed millions of years ago. This single artifact suggested that an advanced, ancient civilization had mapped Antarctica in a distant, ice-free epoch, and that knowledge had survived in fragments until the age of exploration. The implications are staggering. It would mean human history, or the history of a civilization before ours, is far older and more mysterious than we ever taught in school. Of course, mainstream scholars offer a powerful counterargument. They propose the controversial landmass is not Antarctica at all, but a distorted, early attempt to map the eastern coast of South America, perhaps blended with rumors of a great southern continent. They point to inaccuracies and the artistic license common in maps of that era. This is the heart of the enigma. Is the Piri Reis map a miraculous window into a lost prehistoric world, or is it a fascinating historical misinterpretation? The answer depends on what you believe about the source maps Piri Reis said he used, maps he claimed were from the great libraries of antiquity, now lost to time. If he was telling the truth, then those source charts held a secret the world had forgotten, a memory of a green Antarctica preserved on parchment for thousands of years, waiting to be rediscovered. Piri Reis was not alone in his cartographic mystery. Just 18 years after his map surfaced, another chart emerged that deepened the puzzle exponentially. In 1531, the French cartographer Oronteus Finaeus published a world map of stunning, perplexing detail. At the bottom of his depiction, he drew a massive southern continent, not as a vague blob, but with a clearly defined coastline, interior mountain ranges, and what appear to be flowing rivers emptying into bays. The shape is unmistakably similar to the Antarctica we know today, but it is portrayed as a land entirely free of ice. The most chilling detail, experts who have studied it note, is that the map seems to show the approximate location of the transantarctic mountains and even hints at the subglacial topography that would be buried under miles of ice for millions of years. How could a 16th century mapmaker know any of this? The official discovery of Antarctica was still nearly 300 years in the future. The conventional explanation suggests that Phineas, like others of his time, was simply filling in the blank spaces on his globe with speculative geography, a theoretical great southern land that philosophers had debated since ancient Greece. Yet the specificity is haunting. If it was pure guesswork, it was a guess of almost supernatural accuracy regarding a land no human of that era could have visited. The trail of enigmatic maps continues. 2 centuries later, in 1737, the French geographer Philippe Buach produced a chart that took the anomaly a step further. Buach's map shows a southern continent split into 2 large landmasses by a vast sea. For generations, this was dismissed as a cartographic error. Then, in the 20th century, seismic and radar technology finally pierced the Antarctic ice sheet, revealing a shocking truth. Beneath the glaciers, Antarctica is not a single continent. It is, in fact, a vast archipelago of major landmasses like East and West Antarctica, separated by deep, submerged basins. Buach's map, drawn long before any technology could see beneath the ice, curiously approximates this reality. The correlation is not perfect, but the central idea, that Antarctica is divided by significant waterways, is eerily prescient. So what are we to make of this collection of charts? The argument for their accuracy is a profound one. It suggests that these mapmakers were not geniuses of speculation, but were copying from far older source materials. These source maps, now lost, would have been created by a civilization with the knowledge and technology to survey a planet that looked very different from our own, a planet where Antarctica was a temperate, habitable place. The implication is staggering. Someone, thousands of years before Captain Cook's crews first sighted the icy barrier, must have walked its green valleys and sailed its rivers, meticulously charting its contours. Their world later froze solid, burying their achievements under ice, but their knowledge, copied and recopied, survived as a ghost in the parchment of later ages. The counterargument remains steadfast and scientific. Cartography is an art of accumulation and error. Coastlines from travelers' tales get distorted, copied incorrectly, and merged with myth. A map like Buach's could have been influenced by earlier speculative maps, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of inaccurate tradition that, by sheer coincidence, occasionally mirrors a reality we only later confirmed. The rivers on the Finaeus map, skeptics point out, could just as easily be the cartographer's stylistic way of indicating unknown interior spaces. This is the great debate held in the quiet lines of ancient ink. Are we looking at fragmented evidence of a lost chapter in human history, or are we witnessing the remarkable human capacity to see patterns, even accidental ones, in the noise of the past? The maps themselves cannot speak, but they ask a question that echoes down the centuries. If they are wrong, it is a fascinating story of human error. But if they are even partially right, then our timeline of exploration and civilization is not just incomplete, it is fundamentally broken. And if that is true, then what or who created the original maps they were based on? To answer that, we must leave the world of parchment and look directly at the ice itself, where modern technology is beginning to reveal what has been hidden below for eons. The maps present a possibility, but geology holds the official record. To understand why these ancient charts are so deeply controversial, you must first grasp the established timeline of Antarctica itself. According to the overwhelming consensus of Earth science, Antarctica has not been a green, temperate continent for an extraordinarily long time. The continent began its deep freeze around 34 million years ago, when atmospheric carbon dioxide levels dropped and ocean currents shifted, isolating it at the bottom of the world. This was not a sudden event, but a gradual descent into a permanent winter. The ice sheets grew mile upon mile until they entombed the entire landmass. For context, 34 million years ago, our own ancestors were small, shrew-like mammals scurrying under the feet of dinosaurs that had just gone extinct. The idea that any human or any human-like civilization could have walked an ice-free Antarctica is, from this scientific standpoint, not just unlikely but impossible. It defies the entire fossil record and our understanding of human evolution, which places the earliest hominids on the African continent only a few million years ago. This is the colossal scale of the mystery. The Piri Reis and Oronteus Finaeus maps, if taken literally, suggest a habitable Antarctica within the last several thousand years, not the last several million. That is a discrepancy of mind-boggling proportions. It is the difference between recorded human history and the age of the dinosaurs. For conventional science, this isn't a puzzle to be solved, it is an error to be corrected. The geological evidence is considered rock solid, quite literally, drawn from ice core samples, sediment layers, and the study of ancient climates. So when faced with a 16th century parchment, science asks a very reasonable question. Which is more probable, that our fundamental understanding of geology, climatology, and human origins is completely wrong, or that a few old maps have been misinterpreted? This is the core of the clash. It places a collection of enigmatic artifacts against the entire edifice of modern Earth science. To believe the maps are accurate is to believe in a cataclysmic rewrite of our planet's recent history, one where Antarctica's ice cap formed with shocking speed within human memory, or where a sophisticated civilization existed millions of years before us. Both ideas are heretical to mainstream thought, yet this is what makes the mystery so compelling. It forces us to look at the evidence on both sides and ask, could there be a middle ground? Is there any scenario, any sliver of geological possibility that might allow for a radically different past? The answer to that may not lie in the maps or the textbooks, but in what we are now beginning to see with our own technology, peering directly through the ice to the forgotten world below. The clash between ancient maps and modern geology creates an impasse, but we are no longer limited to debating ink on parchment. In recent decades, science has granted us a new kind of vision, the ability to see through the ice itself. This changes everything. Using ice-penetrating radar from aircraft and sophisticated satellite surveys, researchers have begun to map the hidden continent beneath the frozen shell, and what they are finding is a landscape of breathtaking and unexpected complexity. It is a world we are only just beginning to understand. The first major shock came in the late 1950s, when a Soviet expedition detected something impossible. Deep in the heart of East Antarctica, buried under 2.5 miles of solid ice, their instruments revealed the peaks of a massive mountain range. This discovery was so staggering it defied belief. These are the Gambatsev subglacial mountains, a range roughly the size of the European Alps, with sharp peaks and deep valleys, yet completely entombed and invisible from the surface. Their existence is a profound geological puzzle. Mountains this size typically form at the collision of tectonic plates, but this range sits in the middle of a stable continental craton, a quiet geological zone. It is as if someone buried the Alps under a frozen ocean in the middle of Kansas. Their presence suggests a turbulent and ancient geological history for Antarctica that we are still piecing together. But the surprises did not stop with mountains. As radar maps grew more detailed, they unveiled the ghost of an ancient, flowing world. Scientists traced the outlines of vast, deep valleys carved by rivers and basins that once held enormous lakes. They found evidence of sedimentary plains, the kind that form over eons in calm, watery environments. This subglacial topography paints a clear and undeniable picture. Antarctica was once a landscape of dramatic elevation, with rivers cutting through mountains and filling great lakes, a place of erosion and flow, not a static, frozen desert. This, of course, is exactly what geology has always said, but the scale and preservation are startling. It confirms the continent was indeed ice-free, but on a timeline measured in tens of millions of years. Or does it? The discovery of Lake Vostok, a massive subglacial lake the size of Lake Ontario, sealed under the ice for millions of years, adds another layer of intrigue. Its waters, isolated in perpetual darkness and cold, are a time capsule, potentially harboring microbial life forms that have evolved separately from the rest of the planet for eons. This hidden world of water, mountains, and valleys is what the radar reveals, the true physical reality beneath the ice. So where does this leave the mystery of the ancient maps? The modern data undeniably shows a green, mountainous, river-carved Antarctica, but one from a pre-human world. For mainstream science, this is the final word. The maps are interesting curiosities, but the radar proves the landscape they seem to depict has been hidden for geological ages. Yet, for those who look closer, a tantalizing and unsettling question remains. The radar reveals the shape of the buried land, the topography. The Oronteus Finaeus map, drawn centuries before this technology existed, also shows a land with mountains and what look like rivers. Could the correlation, however imperfect, be more than a staggering coincidence? Could it be that the source maps used by these old cartographers were not depicting a contemporary Antarctica, but were instead recording the preserved memory, the geographical ghost of this very subglacial landscape? It is a thought that lingers at the edge of the evidence. We have now seen the hidden continent with our own technological eyes. We know its mountains and its dry riverbeds. The final and most provocative question is whether anything else is down there, preserved in the deep freeze, waiting to tell its story. Buried under 2.5 miles of solid ice lies a world cut off from our own for perhaps 15 million years. This is Lake Vostok, the largest of Antarctica's hidden subglacial lakes, a body of freshwater so isolated it might as well be on another planet. Imagine a place of perpetual darkness under immense pressure, sealed away since a time when mastodons roamed other continents. It is not just a lake, it is a perfect time capsule. For scientists, reaching its waters became a decades-long obsession, a race against contamination. The challenge was monumental. How do you drill through ancient ice to sample pristine water that has never known modern microbes without poisoning it with your own? The solution was an engineering marvel of patience and precision. The team at Russia's Vostok station drilled for years, stopping deliberately hundreds of meters above the lake's surface. They then developed a new thermal drill, using sterilized hot water to melt through the final barrier. At the moment of breakthrough, the pressure difference caused lake water to shoot up the borehole, freezing into a pristine sample. It was a moment of triumph for planetary science, and what they found within that sample was extraordinary. The water from Lake Vostok teemed with microbial life, but not life as we commonly know it. These were extremophiles, organisms thriving in an environment with no light, minimal nutrients, and crushing pressure. Their very existence is a clue. It proves that complex ecosystems can flourish in the most hostile, isolated environments on Earth, and by extension, perhaps on icy moons like Europa or Enceladus. But for our mystery, Lake Vostok holds another, more terrestrial key. The layers of ice above the lake are like the pages of a history book. Each annual layer, compressed over millennia, contains tiny bubbles of ancient atmosphere and traces of pollen or dust. By analyzing these ice cores, scientists can reconstruct a detailed record of Earth's climate going back hundreds of thousands of years. They show the planet's pulse, the rhythmic dance between ice ages and warm periods. The sediment at the very bottom of the lake, however, is the ultimate prize. That mud has been undisturbed since the lake first formed. Within it could be the fossilized remains of organisms from the last time Antarctica was truly warm, a direct biological snapshot from an epoch we have only inferred from geology. This is where speculation intertwines with science. The official story remains that Lake Vostok's ecosystem, while amazing, is purely microbial, and its sediments will tell a tale millions of years old, far outside human history. Yet, the mere existence of this preserved aquatic world forces a profound question. If a vast, liquid lake can survive intact under the ice for 15 million years, what else might be preserved down there? The ice is not just a blanket, it is a deep freezer, a preservative of staggering efficiency. We know it has kept mountains and river valleys in ghostly detail. Could it have preserved other, more delicate things? The thought lingers, unspoken but potent, at the edge of every discovery in that frozen darkness. Lake Vostok proves that Antarctica's hidden world is not dead but sleeping, holding secrets in its cold, dark heart. And if it holds clues to the climate of a prehistoric Earth, could it also hold clues to a history we have not yet dared to write? The pristine ice of Antarctica holds no monuments, but our eyes often see what our minds desire. Across the internet, a persistent and visually striking claim has taken root. It is the idea of pyramids in Antarctica, massive, triangular structures peeking through the snow, captured by satellite imagery and shared with breathless speculation. The most famous examples are found near the Ellsworth Mountains, where sharp, symmetrical peaks rise from the endless white. From above, their geometry is startling. They look engineered, with straight edges and distinct facets that seem to defy the chaos of nature. It is an image that instantly ignites the imagination, suggesting the possibility of a lost city frozen in time, a civilization entombed under the ice. The visual is so powerful it feels like undeniable proof. But what are we actually looking at? Geologists have a clear and well-understood term for these formations. They are called nunataks. A nunatak is simply a mountain peak or rocky ridge that protrudes above a surrounding glacier or ice sheet. They are not built but carved over hundreds of thousands of years by the relentless flow of ice. The process is a masterpiece of natural sculpture. As a glacier moves, it erodes the land beneath it, but when it encounters a particularly hard mass of bedrock, it flows around it. This convergence of glacial erosion from multiple sides can, under the right conditions, wear that rock into a sharp, pyramidal shape. It is the same process that creates the iconic horns of mountains like the Matterhorn in the Alps. The Antarctic pyramids are, in essence, the work of a slow, icy chisel. So why do we so readily see them as something more? This taps into a fundamental trait of the human brain known as pareidolia. It is our innate tendency to perceive meaningful patterns, especially faces or familiar shapes, in random or ambiguous stimuli. We see a man in the moon, a face in the clouds, or a pyramid on a distant, frozen ridge. Our pattern-seeking minds are wired for recognition, a survival trait that helped our ancestors spot predators in the brush. In the vast, featureless white of Antarctica, a symmetrical shape stands out like a beacon, and our brains, hungry for narrative and meaning, instantly leap to the most extraordinary explanation. The real story of the Antarctic pyramids is not one of lost builders, but of our own psychology meeting the profound artistry of geology. It is a reminder that the ice continent is capable of creating wonders that rival our wildest fantasies, all through the patient, impersonal forces of nature. Yet, this resolution to one mystery quietly opens another, more subtle door. If our eyes can so easily be tricked by a natural nunatak into seeing a pyramid, what other wonders might we be overlooking, simply because they do not fit a pattern we recognize? The ice does not only create false pyramids, it also hides things in plain sight, things far stranger than any geometric shape. The human fascination with pyramids runs deeper than any single icy ridge. This shape, a perfect geometric convergence pointing to the heavens, has been etched into the collective memory of cultures separated by oceans and millennia. From the sands of Giza to the jungles of Mesoamerica, the pyramid form emerges again and again, a silent stone testament to something we do not fully understand. So when we see that same silhouette on a satellite image of Antarctica, it triggers more than just pareidolia. It taps into a profound and persistent question. Could these distant, frozen forms be part of a global pattern, a forgotten blueprint scattered across a lost world? This line of thinking leads us into the realm of alternative history, where the icy continent is not just a geological curiosity, but the potential heart of a mystery spanning the entire planet. Popular theorists like Graham Hancock have woven a compelling narrative. He proposes that a highly advanced seafaring civilization existed during the last ice age, a culture with sophisticated astronomical knowledge and monumental architecture. This civilization, he suggests, was largely wiped out in a cataclysmic event around 12,800 years ago, a period some scientists link to rapid climate change and possible comet impact. The survivors of this cataclysm, according to the theory, scattered across the globe, seeding their knowledge among emerging hunter-gatherer societies. They became the gods and giants of myth, the teachers who taught agriculture, astronomy, and stonework, and their original homeland now lost beneath the ice. For many following this thread, Antarctica is the prime candidate. It fits the description of a lost, advanced realm from Plato's account of Atlantis, a great island continent beyond the Pillars of Hercules that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night. Proponents argue that a sudden crustal displacement could have shifted Antarctica from a more temperate latitude to its current polar position, flash freezing it and burying all evidence under miles of ice. In this view, the pyramids of Egypt, Mexico, and Cambodia are not independent inventions, but the legacy of this lost mother culture, built by survivors or in homage to a forgotten homeland. The apparent pyramid shapes in Antarctica, then, are not just eroded nunataks, but perhaps the real thing, the original monuments of that civilization, preserved in the planet's deepest freezer. This is a story of epic scale, connecting dots across time and space into a unified, hidden history. It answers our deep-seated wonder about the similarities in ancient megalithic sites. Why do cultures who supposedly never contacted each other build in such similar ways? The mainstream archaeological answer is one of convergent evolution. The pyramid is a stable, logical shape for building tall, monumental structures from stone. Different cultures, facing similar human impulses to reach for the sky, honor their dead, or mark celestial cycles, arrived at similar solutions independently. It is a testament to shared human ingenuity, not a shared lost teacher. The connection to Antarctica, from this perspective, is a modern myth built on selective interpretation, mistaking the artistry of natural erosion for the handiwork of architects. Yet the power of the theory lies in its emotional resonance. It offers a grand, unifying story for the anomalies of our past, a single explanation for the sudden rise of agriculture, the precision of ancient astronomy, and the global pyramid motif. It places Antarctica not as a barren wasteland, but as the silent, frozen keeper of humanity's greatest secret. Whether you find this idea inspiring or improbable, it forces a valuable question. What are we truly looking for when we gaze at that frozen continent? Are we seeking validation for our oldest myths, or are we ready to accept that the truth, whatever it may be, could be stranger than any story we have yet conceived? The ice holds its silence, but our search for meaning in its shapes reveals just as much about ourselves as it does about the hidden world below. The idea of a world-ending flood is etched into hundreds of ancient cultures. From the epic of Gilgamesh to the story of Noah, the narrative is shockingly consistent. A civilization is warned, a cataclysm of water engulfs the land, and a few survivors must begin the world anew. What if these are not just allegories, but fragmented memories of a real, global event? One radical theory attempts to connect these myths to the mystery of Antarctica, proposing a literal earth-shattering shift. It is called the Earth crustal displacement theory, and it was championed in the mid-20th century by a university professor named Charles Hapgood. His idea was as simple as it was terrifying. Hapgood proposed that the Earth's outer crust, the lithosphere, can occasionally shift as a single, rigid shell over the molten mantle beneath. Imagine the skin of an orange sliding around its juicy interior. According to his model, this shift could move entire continents thousands of miles in a relatively short period, not over millions of years, but potentially within a single human lifetime. In this scenario, a landmass sitting in a temperate, habitable latitude could be suddenly and violently relocated to the polar icebox, and the prime candidate for this catastrophic journey, in Hapgood's view, was Antarctica. He suggested that around 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, a massive crustal displacement occurred. The Antarctic continent, which he believed was positioned much farther north, was wrenched southward into its current polar prison. This would have triggered unimaginable chaos. The rapid movement would cause tsunamis of biblical scale, volcanic eruptions, and a dramatic realignment of the skies as the stars appeared to shift. The formerly green and thriving Antarctica would flash freeze, preserving anything on its surface under a tomb of ice almost instantly. Meanwhile, the sudden redistribution of mass would trigger global floods as oceans sloshed across rearranged coastlines, submerging islands and coastal civilizations. This, Hapgood argued, is the true source of the universal flood myths. It is a theory that elegantly ties together the ancient maps, the myths, and the enigma of a frozen continent. It provides a mechanism for how a civilization on Antarctica could have been lost so completely and so quickly. For a time, the theory even gained a notable supporter. Albert Einstein wrote a foreword to one of Hapgood's books, acknowledging the idea as original and worthy of serious consideration, though he stopped short of a full endorsement. Despite this, mainstream geology has overwhelmingly rejected Earth crustal displacement. The consensus is that the forces required to move the entire crust in such a manner are physically impossible given our understanding of plate tectonics. The mantle is not a frictionless fluid, and the crust is not a single, unbroken shell, but a series of plates that move independently. Geologists point to a mountain of evidence showing continental drift operates on a timescale of hundreds of millions of years, not thousands. The fossil and climate records of Antarctica itself show a gradual cooling over tens of millions of years, not a sudden, recent plunge. Yet the theory refuses to die in alternative history circles. Its power is narrative. It offers a single, dramatic explanation for a host of ancient mysteries. It transforms Antarctica from a passive, frozen desert into an active, tragic character in the human story, the lost homeland that was stolen by the heavens. Whether you see it as compelling speculation or scientific heresy, the sudden freeze theory forces a crucial question. If not a cataclysmic pole shift, then what could explain the persistent human memory of a world drowned, and the haunting suspicion that our history is missing its very first chapter? The search for that answer leads us away from grand theories and back to the ice itself, to the quiet, meticulous work of scientists who are finding clues not in myths but in molecules. The ice holds more than just mountains and lakes. It cradles the ghosts of ancient summers. Scattered across the transantarctic mountains and the remote shores of the continent, scientists have unearthed undeniable proof that Antarctica was once a land of lush greenery and roaring life. They have found fossilized tree stumps, their trunks petrified where they fell, and delicate imprints of fern leaves pressed into stone. These are not subtle hints, but the robust remains of dense, temperate forests that once thrived near the South Pole. Even more astonishing are the bones. Paleontologists have discovered the remains of dinosaurs, including the massive, long-necked sauropods and armored ankylosaurs, species that required a warm climate and abundant plant life to survive. These fossils date squarely to the Cretaceous period, a time when the Earth was a global greenhouse roughly 100 million years ago. This evidence is rock solid and universally accepted. Antarctica was absolutely a warm, vibrant continent, a far cry from the frozen desert we see today. The scientific timeline is clear and vast. The continent's great forests swayed in the breeze and dinosaurs roamed its river valleys for millions of years, long before the first ape-like ancestor walked anywhere on Earth. The deep freeze began gradually over tens of millions of years, finally completing its grip around 34 million years ago. So the mystery posed by the ancient maps is not whether Antarctica was green, but when. The fossils prove a green past, but one locked in a distant pre-human epoch. The maps suggest a green past within human memory. This is the critical, razor-thin gap in the mystery. Could there be any scenario, any overlooked evidence that places a habitable Antarctica within the timeline of human civilization? The forests and dinosaurs speak of a world that existed and ended on a geological clock. The maps whisper of a world that might have existed and ended on a human one. Bridging that gap requires something more than petrified wood. It requires a catalyst, an event dramatic enough to rewrite a climate in centuries, not eons. It leads us to the most volatile question of all. What could possibly make an entire continent freeze over, not in millions of years, but fast enough to be remembered in myth? The forests of the dinosaur age were not the only chapter in Antarctica's warm history. To understand the true scale of its transformation, we must travel even deeper into the planet's memory, to a world that feels almost alien. Enter the Eocene epoch, roughly 50 million years ago. This was not just a warm period, it was a greenhouse Earth. Carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere were several times higher than today, and lush, temperate rainforests stretched all the way to the poles. Antarctica was not a land of ice, but a verdant, swampy continent, teeming with life that seems utterly out of place there now. Picture coastlines fringed with dense forests of southern beech and conifer trees, their roots sinking into soggy, peaty soil. In the undergrowth, small early mammals scurried, including the peculiar ancestors of creatures we know today. Fossils tell us that one of these inhabitants was a small, dog-sized mammal that would eventually give rise to an entire lineage, including the modern sloth. This gentle, leaf-eating animal, whose descendants now hang from trees in tropical jungles, once foraged in the damp, green shadows of an Antarctic forest. The mental image is jarring, a sloth ancestor ambling through a landscape that is now the most brutal desert on Earth. This Eocene world is crucial to our understanding because it grounds the fantastical in the factual. It proves beyond any doubt that Antarctica's green past is real and richly documented by paleontology, but it also illuminates the staggering, almost incomprehensible scale of deep time. The gap between that swampy Eocene sloth and the first appearance of any hominid, any creature even remotely on the path to becoming human, is tens of millions of years. It is a chasm of time so vast that it dwarfs our entire recorded history, from the pyramids to the present day, into a mere blink. This is the immense weight of the scientific timeline. The evidence shows a continent that was warm for epochs that make the entirety of human existence seem like a fleeting moment. So when we look at a map from 1513 that seems to show an ice-free coast, we are confronted with a profound disconnect. The real, verified green Antarctica existed in a world before grass had fully evolved, let alone human cartographers. This deep time perspective makes the mystery not smaller but more profound. It asks us to consider what, if anything, could bridge that impossible gap between the world of the Eocene sloth and the world of human memory. The transition from a warm, sloth-inhabited continent to a frozen fortress was a story written over millions of years, a slow geological drama. But in the human story, Antarctica's mystery took a sharp, modern turn in the immediate aftermath of a global war. In 1946, just 1 year after World War II ended, the United States launched the largest military expedition ever sent to the frozen continent. Code-named Operation Highjump, it was a staggering display of force led by the famed polar explorer Admiral Richard Byrd. The official mission was one of science and readiness. The Navy assembled a massive armada, 13 ships including an aircraft carrier, a submarine, and over 4,000 men. Their stated goals were to train personnel, test equipment in extreme cold, and consolidate American claims by establishing a permanent research base. It was a monumental logistical feat, mapping vast stretches of coastline and conducting aerial surveys. By all public accounts, it was a resounding success, paving the way for future peaceful scientific exploration. Yet the sheer scale and timing of the operation, arriving so suddenly after a war that had stretched across the globe, planted seeds of deep suspicion. Why send such an overwhelming military force to the most remote place on Earth at a time when America was rapidly demobilizing? This question became fertile ground for conspiracy lore. One persistent theory suggests Operation Highjump was not a training exercise but a combat mission. According to this narrative, fleeing Nazi scientists and officers had established a secret base called New Schwabenland in a remote region of Antarctica during the war. There, they were supposedly developing advanced aircraft or even disc-shaped flying craft. The massive American fleet, the story goes, was dispatched to root out this last remnant of the Third Reich. The lore intensified with whispers that Bayard's fleet encountered fierce resistance, suffering losses to strange, fast-moving aircraft before being forced to retreat earlier than planned. The fuel for this fire came in part from Admiral Bayard himself. In a later interview, he made a cryptic statement that has been endlessly parsed. He warned, in the event of a new war, that America would be attacked by enemy aircraft that could fly pole to pole with incredible speed. In the context of the nascent Cold War, he was likely referring to the Soviet Union's long-range bomber capabilities. But taken out of that context and applied to the rumors of his Antarctic mission, his words sounded like a confession of encountering something otherworldly. The official records show no evidence of combat, and historians attribute any early departure to the brutal, worsening Antarctic weather. The New Schwabenland theory is largely built on fragmentary intelligence reports and speculative fiction. Yet, the enduring power of the story speaks to the aura Antarctica holds in our imagination. It is the perfect blank slate for our deepest fears and wildest speculations, a place so remote that anything could be hidden there, from lost Nazi labs to entrances to a hollow Earth. Operation Highjump, in reality, was a landmark in Antarctic exploration. But in the shadowlands of myth, it became the moment the modern military-industrial complex allegedly stumbled upon the continent's oldest secret and found it defended. The whispers of secret Nazi bases did not emerge from a vacuum. They grew from a seed of documented history, a real expedition launched on the eve of global war. In late 1938, with Europe teetering on the brink, Nazi Germany sent a ship called the Schwabenland to the shores of Antarctica. This was a scientific mission with a stark political purpose. The crew dropped swastika emblazoned darts from their seaplanes onto the ice, formally claiming a vast, wedge-shaped sector of Queen Maud land for the Third Reich. They named it New Schwabenland or New Swabia. Using advanced seismic sounding equipment, they mapped the terrain, discovering strange, ice-free regions with warm lakes fed by geothermal vents, which they poetically named Skirmacher oases. The expedition was real, the mapping was real, and the claim was real. Then the war began, and New Schwabenland faded from the world's attention, swallowed by the greater conflict. It was in the ashes of 1945 that the vacuum of knowledge filled with speculation. As the Allies stormed Berlin, they found that several top Nazi scientists and SS officers were unaccounted for. Submarines had departed from German ports with unknown destinations. The official story was that these men had fled to South America, but another, more tantalizing rumor took root. What if they had gone south, much farther south, to the territory their nation had already staked? The theory proposed that these fugitives used the detailed maps from the Schwabenland expedition to locate the hidden geothermal oases. There, in vast, naturally heated caverns beneath the ice, they could have built a secret redoubt, a final fortress for the Reich. This idea was supercharged by the Nazis' own fascination with the occult and alternative science. They had actively researched so-called vril energy, a mythical force from the Earth's core, and sought artifacts of ancient, hyper-advanced civilizations. Proponents of the theory ask, what if the Nazis weren't just looking for a hiding place but for a power source? What if their interest in Antarctica was driven by intelligence, perhaps from those very same enigmatic ancient maps, suggesting the continent held the ruins and technology of a lost world? In this narrative, Operation Highjump was not a training mission, but a military assault on this hidden base, which explains its massive, sudden scale. The documented history ends with the Schwabenland's return. The speculative fiction begins with its departure. Separating the two requires a clear-eyed look at motivation and possibility. The Nazi regime was certainly capable of grandiose, occult-driven projects. Their expedition did happen. The existence of ice-free geothermal areas is a proven scientific fact. Could a small group have survived there in secrecy? The extreme environment, even in an oasis, makes long-term, large-scale habitation a staggering logistical challenge, but not a complete impossibility for a determined, well-supplied group. The leap into ancient technology, however, is where history fully gives way to myth. There is no physical evidence, no declassified document, no credible witness that places a functional Nazi base in Antarctica after the war. The story persists because it stitches together tantalizing facts with our deepest anxieties. It combines the unfinished business of the Second World War with the eternal mystery of the frozen continent. Antarctica, in its vast, silent emptiness, becomes the perfect blank canvas. We project our fears of escaped war criminals onto it. We project our fascination with lost worlds onto it. The new Schwabenland legend is not really about Nazis or ancient vril energy. It is about the human need to fill unknown spaces with stories, especially stories that explain the horrors of our recent past by linking them to the wonders of a forgotten one. It reveals that Antarctica is more than a continent. It is an idea, a shadowland where our history and our mythology collide and freeze together into a single, compelling mystery. The most extreme offshoot of the Antarctic mystery plunges us directly into the planet's core. This is the hollow Earth theory, a centuries-old idea that our world is not a solid sphere, but a hollow shell containing another world within, lit by a central sun and accessible through giant openings at the North and South poles. In this mythology, Antarctica is not just a continent, but a gateway. The swirling storms and ice shelves conceal a passage to a warm, verdant interior realm, a hidden land populated by an advanced civilization, perhaps the remnants of Atlantis or even extraterrestrial beings. It is a concept that lives in the pulps of science fiction, but it became entangled with Antarctic lore through one very specific and controversial document, the alleged secret diary of Admiral Richard Byard. The text, circulated for decades, purports to be Byard's personal account from his historic flight over the North Pole in 1947. In vivid, first-person prose, it describes his plane being guided through a polar opening by strange, sleek aircraft. He emerges into a warm, sunlit interior world of lush mountains and rivers, where he is met by representatives of a peaceful, highly advanced society. These beings, the diary claims, warn him about humanity's destructive path with nuclear weapons and send him back with a message for our surface world. The narrative is gripping, a perfect blend of adventure and apocalyptic warning. If true, it would be the most staggering discovery in human history. But there is no evidence that Byard ever wrote such a diary. Historians and the Admiral's own family have consistently denounced it as a forgery, a work of fiction likely penned in the 1950s that latched onto Byard's famous name. The language and themes align more with the flying saucer contactee stories of that era than with Byard's known, meticulous expedition logs. So why does this myth persist with such tenacity? The analysis is revealing. Antarctica, more than any other place, is defined by its absolute inaccessibility. It is a blank space on the map in the most literal sense, a white void where the normal rules of geography seem suspended. The human mind abhors such a vacuum. We are storytellers by nature, and a vast, unknown frontier demands an explanation, a narrative to fill the empty void. The Hollow Earth tale and Bayard's fabricated diary provide that narrative in the most spectacular way possible. They transform Antarctica from a passive, frozen wasteland into an active, magical threshold. The unbearable cold and howling winds become not just weather, but a guardian, a dramatic curtain shielding a wonder too immense for our surface minds to comprehend. This is not about historical truth, but about psychological need. When faced with a continent that defies life and conceals its past under miles of ice, we invent a hidden life and a glorious past for it. We project our deepest hopes for a wiser, lost civilization and our fears about our own technological recklessness onto that frozen canvas. The Bayard Diary myth is a modern folktale, born from the same impulse that created legends of Shangri-La or El Dorado. It tells us less about what is under the ice and more about what we wish were there, a second chance, a hidden teacher, a place where the mistakes of history have not been made. The real Antarctica may hold fossils and subglacial lakes, but the mythical Antarctica holds a mirror, reflecting our own longing for mystery in a world we have largely mapped and measured. As we strip away these layers of modern legend, we are left with the original, enduring question, now sharper than ever. If the wildest stories are just our own imaginations echoing in the void, what genuine, tangible clues remain that point to a human story written in ice? The search for a lost human civilization inevitably leads to an even more radical possibility. What if the architects of Antarctica's mystery were not human at all? This is the realm of the ancient astronaut hypothesis, a framework that reinterprets our entire history through an extraterrestrial lens. Proponents like Erich von Däniken ask a provocative question. If advanced beings from another world visited Earth in our distant past, where would they establish a base? A temperate, strategically isolated continent, far from the emerging populations of Africa and Eurasia, would be an ideal choice. In this speculative scenario, Antarctica, green and hospitable thousands of years ago, becomes the perfect candidate for an alien outpost. Its sudden, catastrophic freeze, whether from a pole shift or another cataclysm, then acts as a perfect preservative, locking their technology and structures in a deep freeze time capsule, safe from erosion and discovery for millennia. This idea transforms the continent from a potential human homeland into a cosmic archaeological site, a warehouse of off-world secrets. The evidence cited for this is no longer just old maps or geological theories, but modern satellite imagery. Across the internet, enthusiasts scour platforms like Google Earth, pointing to strange, geometric anomalies on the icy surface. They highlight what appear to be massive, rectilinear shapes buried just beneath the snow, or perfect circles and lines that seem too orderly for natural glacial formations. One famous example is a feature near the Shackleton mountain range that, from a certain angle and resolution, resembles a vast, buried complex with what look like towering pillars or walls. To the trained geologist, these are classic examples of sastrugi, wind-sculpted snow ridges, or the exposed edges of bedrock formations. But to the ancient alien theorist, they are the eroded tops of gigantic, alien-made structures, their true scale hidden under the ice. Von Däniken and others argue that our ancestors, encountering the survivors or the technology of such a base, would have worshipped these visitors as gods. The global flood myths, they suggest, could be memories of the cataclysm that destroyed the base, and the sudden leap in human knowledge around 10,000 years ago. Agriculture, astronomy, monumental architecture could be the legacy of that contact, a gift from starfarers before their Antarctic headquarters was sealed in ice. This narrative is powerfully seductive. It provides a single, elegant answer to multiple mysteries: who built the potential structures, where they came from, and why their traces are so utterly vanished from the rest of the world. The ice becomes both the preserver and the explainer. Yet, the scientific rebuttal is rooted in the principles of Occam's razor. Is it more likely that strange shapes on satellite images are the result of known geological processes and the human brain's pattern-seeking tendency, or that they are proof of an extraterrestrial installation on Earth? The burden of proof remains monumental. No artifact recovered from Antarctica has shown non-terrestrial materials or technology. The theories rely heavily on interpretation of ambiguous imagery and the linking of mythological dots across cultures. But the persistence of the idea speaks to a profound human hunger. If the ruins under the ice are not from any known human culture, then our imagination must fill the void with something even more extraordinary. It suggests we are so determined to find meaning in that frozen desert that we are willing to look to the stars for its architects. This leaves us at a crossroads of interpretation, where every potential clue fractures into multiple competing realities. A curious shape can be a nunatak, a pyramid, or an alien landing pad. An ancient map can be a mistake, a miracle, or a record of a cosmic visitor's homeland. The ice itself refuses to give a clear answer, reflecting back only the theories we project upon it. To move beyond speculation, we must ask what it would truly take to settle the debate, to move from interpreting shadows to holding a piece of the puzzle in our hands. Antarctica's ice is a museum of the cosmos. While we search its depths for traces of lost human history, scientists are engaged in a parallel and equally profound hunt, one that looks not down but up. The continent's vast, pristine ice sheets are the world's greatest natural collection plate for objects from space. This makes Antarctica a premier hunting ground for meteorites, and the discoveries here have already rewritten chapters of our solar system's story. The process is elegant in its simplicity. When a meteorite falls onto the Antarctic ice cap, it becomes embedded. Over centuries, the slow, relentless flow of the glacier carries these space rocks toward the coast. When the ice meets a barrier like the Transantarctic Mountains, it is pushed upward and scoured by fierce winds. This process, called ablation, strips away the ancient ice layer by layer, leaving a concentrated field of meteorites stranded on the blue ice surface. It is as if the continent itself is curating a display of celestial artifacts, patiently gathering them from across its expanse and presenting them for us to find. These aren't just random rocks. Among the thousands recovered are some of the most significant meteorites ever studied. Perhaps the most famous is LH84001, a Martian meteorite discovered in the Allan Hills region. This small, grayish-green stone caused a global sensation in the 1990s when NASA scientists announced it contained microscopic structures that resembled fossilized bacteria. The claim of ancient Martian life within an Antarctic meteorite ignited a firestorm of debate that continues to this day. While most researchers now attribute those structures to non-biological mineral processes, the meteorite stands as a powerful symbol. It proved that material from other planets could travel to Earth, preserved within Antarctica's icy vault. The search has grown even more ambitious. Scientists now sweep the ice not just for fist-sized stones, but for dust. They are hunting for interstellar particles, tiny grains of matter that originated beyond our solar system, carried here on the solar wind or within comets. Collecting these motes of stardust is a task of incredible precision, requiring melting tons of ultra-clean snow and sifting through it with instruments sensitive enough to find a single speck of cosmic origin among billions of terrestrial ones. Finding such a particle would be like holding a piece of another star, so we have two searches happening on the same frozen canvas. One looks for evidence of a terrestrial past hidden below, the other for evidence of a cosmic past delivered from above. This convergence invites a staggering question. What if the ice holds a relic that bridges both quests? Could a future meteorite plucked from the Antarctic blue ice contain something more than minerals or fossilized microbes? The ultimate hope and the wildest speculation is that a recovered object might carry evidence not just of past life, but of past technology. a fragment of an ancient probe, a manufactured alloy unknown on Earth, or an artifact with intentional patterning, any such discovery would shatter our understanding. It would rewrite not merely human history but cosmic history, suggesting we have never been alone, and that evidence of other travelers has been lying in plain sight, preserved in Earth's coldest, quietest museum. This shifts the mystery from a question of who walked here to a question of what fell here. The ice does not discriminate. It preserves everything equally, from the echoes of our own possible ancestors to the physical pieces of distant worlds. In its silent white expanse, the deepest secrets of Earth and the heavens wait side by side, frozen in time, offering two paths to the same profound truth about our place in the universe. A new force is now actively reshaping the frozen continent, not with speculation but with measurable physical change. Global warming is causing Antarctica's ice to retreat at an alarming pace. Vast ice shelves, stable for thousands of years, are fracturing and collapsing into the sea. Glaciers are pulling back, exposing rocky ground and sediment that has not seen sunlight since before the pyramids were built. This rapid melt is a crisis for our planet, but it also introduces a paradoxical and urgent twist to our mystery. As the ice recedes, it is acting as a colossal, if unintended, archaeological dig. Landscapes entombed for epochs are being laid bare in real time. This presents a profound and timely question. Could the very process that threatens our future accidentally unveil the evidence that rewrites our past? The possibility is both thrilling and sobering. Imagine a glacier pulling back to reveal not just bedrock but the outline of a foundation or a strange artifact preserved in the mud. A collapsing ice shelf could expose a cave sealed for 12,000 years, holding who knows what inside. The acceleration of climate change means these revelations could happen not over centuries, but within our lifetimes or even within the next few decades. Scientists are already racing to study these newly exposed areas, primarily to understand the rate of melt and its global implications, but their eyes are now trained on the ground as well. Every fresh patch of gravel, every newly uncovered valley floor, is a potential site of discovery. It could yield the fossil of an unknown animal from a warmer period, or it could yield something else entirely, something that does not fit the established timeline. A shaped stone tool, a piece of worked metal, or even the remnants of a structure would be cataclysmic to our historical narrative. The irony is inescapable. The same industrial civilization whose growth may be founded on a forgotten history is now, through its unintended consequences, melting the very vault that could contain the proof. The clock is ticking in two directions at once. We are in a race against time to understand and mitigate climate change, and simultaneously, we are in a race against the same phenomenon to discover what secrets the ice releases before they are lost to the sea or to further degradation. This adds a layer of tangible urgency to what was once a purely theoretical puzzle. We are no longer just wondering what is under the ice. We are watching the lid begin to lift right before our eyes. What will we find in the meltwater? The ice does not just preserve landscapes, it preserves life itself in its most tenacious and ancient forms. Deep within the Antarctic ice sheets, scientists have recovered cores that contain more than just climate data. They hold living bacteria, tiny organisms that have been frozen in suspended animation for hundreds of thousands, even millions of years. When gently warmed and placed in a nutrient-rich medium, some of these microbes slowly stir back to activity. They are not fossils but living relics, survivors from an age when the ice was still forming. These extremophiles, organisms that thrive in conditions lethal to most life, redefine our understanding of resilience. They endure total darkness, crushing pressure, freezing temperatures, and near starvation for eons, only to resume their cellular functions as if no time had passed at all. This discovery is a revelation. It proves that life is not just persistent, it is practically indestructible under the right conditions. The ice is not a barren vault, but a dormant garden holding life in a state of profound pause. These ancient, revived microbes offer a direct biological link to Earth's distant past, a past we can literally reanimate in a petri dish. But they also point our imagination toward the future and toward other worlds. If life can survive frozen in Antarctic ice for 1,000,000 years, could it survive in the Martian permafrost or in the subsurface ocean of Jupiter's moon Europa? Antarctica becomes a testing ground for the very limits of life in the universe. This leads to the next, even more profound question brewing in the scientific community. The isolated, dark waters of subglacial lakes like Vostok are not frozen solid. They are liquid, sealed away from the atmosphere and the rest of the biosphere for up to 15 million years. The microbes found there are not simply survivors from the surface, frozen and preserved. They are part of a potentially unique, continuous ecosystem that has evolved in utter isolation. Scientists suspect these lakes may contain organisms that split from the known tree of life so long ago that their biochemistry could be fundamentally different. We could be looking at a shadow biosphere, a separate branch on the tree of life that has been developing its own rules in the dark, cut off from the sun-driven world above. Discovering such a lineage would be a biological event on par with finding life on another planet. It would mean that on Earth alone, life found not just one way to exist, but two completely independent paths. The implications ripple back through our mystery. We have wondered if complex, unknown organisms could survive in those lightless depths. The answer from the extremophiles is a resounding yes, life finds a way. But the deeper implication is more unsettling. If a separate tree of life can flourish in the hidden waters under the ice, what does that say about the nature of life itself? It suggests that the conditions for life are far more flexible than we ever dreamed, and that isolation can breed forms of life beyond our current imagination. We search the ice for pyramids and lost cities, but the greatest secret Antarctica may hold is not a relic of a past civilization, but a living, breathing alternative to life as we know it, thriving in the eternal dark below. This global sanctuary of ice is not a lawless frontier, but one of humanity's most remarkable diplomatic achievements. In 1959, at the height of the Cold War, 12 nations, including the United States and the Soviet Union, signed the Antarctic Treaty, a document of profound and hopeful simplicity. Its core principles are breathtaking in their ambition. Antarctica is dedicated forever to peace and scientific cooperation. It explicitly bans all military activity, including the establishment of bases, the testing of weapons, and any nuclear explosions. Perhaps most strikingly, it freezes all territorial claims. While 7 nations still hold historical claims that overlap like a pie chart on the continent, the treaty states that no new claims can be made and no existing claims can be asserted while the treaty is in force. It is a place where geopolitics is literally put on ice, allowing scientists from rival nations to work side by side in a spirit of shared discovery. This framework, now supported by over 50 nations, is called the Antarctic Treaty System, and it has successfully governed the continent for decades. Yet within this very openness, conspiracy theorists have found shadows. They point to certain areas that are strictly off-limits to all but authorized personnel, interpreting these necessary protections as evidence of concealment. The most cited example is the immediate vicinity of the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. This zone is restricted for clear, practical reasons. The station is a delicate, high-altitude research hub operating in one of the most extreme environments on Earth. Uncontrolled access by untrained visitors could disrupt critical experiments, damage life support infrastructure, or create dangerous situations. The restriction is about safety and scientific integrity, not secrecy. Similarly, there are specially protected areas, often around fragile penguin colonies or unique dry valleys, where access is permitted only for specific research to prevent contamination or disturbance. These are conservation measures, not locked doors hiding ancient ruins. The leap from protected scientific site to forbidden secret base is a compelling narrative twist, but it misreads the treaty's purpose. The agreement was designed to prevent the continent from becoming a chessboard for national ambition, to keep it from being carved up by militaries and miners. Its success is measured in the open exchange of data and the peaceful coexistence of research stations from around the world. The real forbidden zones are not hiding artifacts, they are preserving the last pristine environments on Earth for future study. So when you hear whispers of places no one is allowed to go, remember the context. The treaty created a shield, not a vault. It protects Antarctica from us, not us from what might be in Antarctica. This legal framework, however, leads to a final practical dilemma. If something truly world-shaking was ever found under the ice, who would decide what to do with it, and how would this treaty of peace handle a discovery that could shatter our history? Whispers from the ice are the hardest to verify and the most difficult to forget. Beyond the official reports and peer-reviewed papers, there exists a shadow history of Antarctica, told in hushed tones and anonymous accounts. These are the stories that never make it into the scientific journals, the anecdotes passed between researchers over a cup of coffee in a cramped station galley, or shared in online forums by those claiming to have worked on the continent. They speak of moments when the drill bit brought up something that was not bedrock, not sediment, but wrong. A metallic object with smooth, machined-looking edges recovered from deep within an ice core. A curiously shaped stone found on a newly exposed ridge that bore what looked like deliberate carvings, geometric patterns that did not match any known weathering process. In these stories, the discovery is met not with celebration but with a sudden, tense quiet. Higher authorities are notified, the object is photographed, bagged, and then it vanishes, shipped off the continent on the next supply flight with no further explanation given to the team that found it. The individuals involved are reportedly debriefed, reminded of their non-disclosure agreements, and the incident is never spoken of officially again. These tales are the modern folklore of Antarctica, the campfire stories for the age of satellite phones and ice-penetrating radar. They tap directly into our deepest suspicions about what might be hidden and who might be hiding it. The critical point, and the one that fuels endless speculation, is the complete absence of verifiable evidence. No clear photographs, no credible scientific whistleblowers coming forward with physical proof, no catalog numbers in any public database. The stories exist in a frustrating limbo, impossible to prove, and for those who believe, impossible to dismiss. This is where human psychology takes over. Secrecy, even necessary and benign secrecy, acts like a vacuum. In the absence of clear information, speculation rushes in to fill the void. When a government or a research consortium declares an area off limits for safety or ongoing research, it is a logical and common practice. But in the context of a continent already shrouded in ancient mystery, that same logical act is reinterpreted. It becomes proof of a cover-up. The mundane need to protect a delicate experiment or a fragile ecosystem transforms, in the public imagination, into a desperate attempt to conceal a world-altering artifact. This cycle is self-perpetuating. A strange rock formation is photographed from a distance, sparking theories. Authorities, focused on their actual scientific mission, do not engage with the viral speculation, which is then taken as confirmation of their guilt. The lack of transparency, often simply a matter of limited resources or protocol, becomes the strongest evidence for the conspiracy. So we are left with a landscape of rumor, built on a foundation of genuine human curiosity and our innate distrust of closed doors. The tales of metallic objects and carved stones may be nothing more than misinterpretations of natural formations, amplified by the isolation and the intense desire to find something extraordinary. Yet they persist because they answer a need the official science often leaves unaddressed. The need for narrative, for a story where the frozen continent is not just a passive subject of study, but an active keeper of secrets, with guardians ensuring those secrets remain buried. Whether these whispers are echoes of truth or simply the sound of our own imaginations echoing across the ice, they have become an inseparable part of Antarctica's enduring enigma. The digital age has turned every curious mind into a potential polar explorer. Armed with nothing more than a laptop and an internet connection, a global community of amateur sleuths now spends countless hours scanning the high-resolution satellite imagery of Antarctica, searching for clues the professionals might have missed. This modern pastime has transformed the frozen continent into the world's largest and coldest puzzle, with every strange shadow and odd pixel scrutinized for meaning. Two locations in particular have become legendary in this online treasure hunt, their coordinates shared and debated in endless forum threads. The first is often called the entrance. At roughly 79 degrees south, 81 degrees west near the Ellsworth Mountains, the imagery reveals what looks like a perfectly rectangular, dark opening in the side of a snowy ridge. It appears man-made, an artificial door or tunnel leading deep into the mountain. The second is the downed UFO shape, a series of large, circular and oval impressions on the ice shelf that from above resemble the outline of a crashed, disc-shaped craft or perhaps a series of massive, buried structures. The images are compelling, sparking immediate visions of secret bases or ancient vehicles preserved in the ice. The human brain, as we've seen, is wired to find patterns, and these shapes scream intentional design. But before we let our imaginations run wild, we must understand the mundane magic of satellite imagery itself. The entrance is a classic case of pareidolia meeting pixelation. When you zoom in on a high-contrast area, a dark rock face against bright snow, at the limits of a satellite's resolution, the edges can become blocky and sharp. What might be a naturally occurring crevice or shadow cast by a serac, an ice pinnacle, gets rendered by the software as a stark, geometric shape. The perfect rectangle is often an artifact of the imaging process itself, not a sign of construction. As for the downed UFO circles, the explanation lies in the dynamic, living nature of the ice. These are frequently sastrugi, the elegant and deceptive formations carved by relentless polar winds. Wind streaming over the ice sheet at hurricane force for months on end sculpts the hard snow into waves, ridges, and sometimes near-perfect troughs and domes. From a vertical satellite view, these wind-sculpted features can create astonishingly regular patterns that look engineered. Other circular shapes can be explained as ice dollings, where a subglacial lake has drained or shifted, causing the surface ice to collapse in a circular depression. None of this diminishes the fun of the search, however. This digital sleuthing represents a beautiful democratization of mystery. It allows anyone, anywhere, to participate in the grand question of what Antarctica hides. It fosters a global community of curious people sharing finds and theories, a collective effort to peer into the white unknown. The value isn't in proving a conspiracy, but in celebrating the enduring human drive to explore and question. Every strange shape, even when explained, reinforces the awe we feel for a continent that can so easily trick our eyes and fire our dreams. It reminds us that Antarctica, in its vast and silent majesty, remains the last place on Earth where the map still says, "Here be mysteries." And as long as a single person is zooming in on a pixel, wondering what that shadow might be, the great Antarctic enigma continues to breathe. Antarctica's white expanse is the last great blank space on our map. This emptiness itself is the source of its power. For centuries, cartographers filled the unknown edges of their world with monsters and myths, labeling them terra incognita, unknown land. Antarctica is our modern, physical terra incognita. It is a literal white void, and the human mind cannot abide a vacuum. We are compelled to fill it, not with monsters anymore, but with stories. We project our deepest questions onto its icy canvas. Where did we come from? Were we alone? Did a great civilization rise and fall before our own? Antarctica, in its silent remoteness, becomes the perfect receptacle for all these unanswered queries. It is far enough away to be mysterious, yet real enough to be possible. This psychological need transforms a continent of ice into a mirror, reflecting our own hunger for a grander, more mysterious past. We see this pattern throughout history. Atlantis was always beyond the Pillars of Hercules, a place just outside the known world. Shangri-La was hidden in the unreachable Himalayas. These legendary places share a crucial trait. They are always just beyond the frontier, receding as our knowledge expands. Antarctica is the final frontier that has not receded. Our satellites have mapped its surface, but its past and its subsurface remain profoundly unknown. So it inherits the mantle of all lost worlds. It becomes the new Atlantis, not because Plato described it, but because we need an Atlantis to exist. The ice provides the perfect excuse for its disappearance. A cataclysm that freezes a continent solid is a more plausible modern myth than one that sinks it beneath the waves. Our fascination, then, is not merely about what might be buried there. It is about what its very existence represents, the last place on Earth where our collective imagination can still run free, unchallenged by the full light of discovery. In a world where every mountain peak has been climbed and every ocean depth probed, Antarctica holds onto its secrets. It allows us to believe for a moment longer that wonder is not dead, that history might still have a surprise for us waiting in the cold and the dark. That belief, that tantalizing possibility of the unknown, is perhaps the greatest treasure the frozen continent guards. For the professional archaeologist, the maps and myths are not evidence, they are echoes. The cornerstone of their discipline is built upon physical proof, artifacts you can hold in your hand, settlements you can walk through, bones you can carve and date. To suggest that human history needs a complete rewrite based on a few enigmatic lines on parchment is, from this perspective, not just premature. It disregards the entire methodology of how we understand the past. They ask a simple, powerful question. Where are the cities? Where are the pottery shards, the burial sites, the middens of discarded tools that mark every other human habitation on Earth? Without these tangible remains, the story remains a compelling fiction, not a historical fact. This demand is not stubbornness, it is the bedrock of scientific rigor. Extraordinary claims, as the saying goes, require extraordinary evidence. A continent-spanning civilization that left no physical trace is, by definition, an extraordinary claim. The stalemate that emerges is not born of closed minds, but of a fundamental disagreement about what constitutes proof. On one side, you have the intriguing patterns, the curious correlations, and the haunting whispers of myth. On the other, you have the silent, empty ground. This is where the unique brutality of Antarctica itself becomes the central character in the debate. Imagine trying to find evidence of a lost culture under normal conditions, in a jungle or a desert. It is difficult but not impossible. Structures erode, but foundations often remain. Tools get buried but can be unearthed. Now, place that same culture under 2 miles of moving, crushing, grinding ice. A glacier is not a gentle blanket, it is a geological bulldozer. It does not preserve a city, it pulverizes it. Over thousands of years, the slow, immense flow of an ice sheet would scrape any structure down to its bedrock foundation, then grind those stones into fine sediment. Metal tools would corrode and be swept away. Organic remains like wood, bone, or cloth would be utterly obliterated by the pressure and the passage of eons. The only potential survivors would be objects or structures of immense durability, perhaps carved deep into stable bedrock or sheltered in rare, geothermally warmed caves that escape the ice's direct flow. So the archaeologist's primary objection, the lack of physical evidence, is met with a powerful counter from the mystery itself. The very environment that could hide a civilization is also the one most perfectly designed to destroy all traces of it. This creates a perfect, frustrating deadlock. How do you prove something existed when the most likely custodian of its remains is also its executioner? The ice giveth no answers and taketh away all proof. This forces us into a realm of inference and shadow, where the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, but a testament to the sheer destructive power of the deep freeze. We are left weighing the silence. Is it the silence of nothing ever being there, or the profound, absolute silence of a tomb that has erased its own contents? Until a trowel scrapes against worked stone in a blue ice field, or a radar ping reveals an unmistakably geometric void deep below, the debate remains suspended between two equally powerful forces: the human desire to discover a grander past and science's solemn duty to demand we prove it. The stalemate between speculation and evidence will not last forever. A new wave of exploration is poised to finally pierce the deepest secrets of the ice, armed not with ancient maps but with technology of breathtaking precision. The coming decades will see missions that sound like science fiction, deployed on the most hostile terrain on Earth. One of the most ambitious is the quest to retrieve the oldest ice on the planet. Projects like the European Beyond Epica are drilling over 2 miles down to extract ice cores formed over 1.5 million years ago. These pristine time capsules will reveal the planet's climatic pulse in unprecedented detail, but they may also bring up something else entirely. As the drill bores through layers that have never melted, it could capture and preserve particles, pollen, or even microscopic biological material from epochs we have only theorized about. It is a direct probe into deep time, and what it brings to the surface could hold surprises we have not yet dared to predict. Meanwhile, the hidden aquatic world is about to receive its first robotic visitors. Engineers are developing sterile, autonomous submersibles designed to explore the liquid depths of subglacial lakes like Vostok and Mercer. These robots, lowered through miles of ice via a thermally drilled hole, will be our eyes in the perpetual dark. They will map the lake floors, sample the water and sediments, and search for signs of life that has evolved in total isolation. The discovery of a unique shadow biosphere in these lightless waters would be a revolution in biology, proving that life can flourish in conditions we once thought impossible. It may not be a lost city, but finding a second, independent tree of life under the Antarctic ice would be a discovery of similar, world-altering magnitude. Above it all, next-generation radar systems mounted on satellites and aircraft are achieving resolutions once thought unattainable. These advanced sensors can peer through thousands of feet of ice to map the subglacial topography with centimeter-scale accuracy, distinguishing between bedrock, sediment, water, and potentially anomalous voids or structures. This technology turns the entire continent into an open book, its pages written in ice and stone waiting to be read. The cumulative power of these tools is transformative. They shift the search from interpreting shadows to collecting hard, undeniable data. The truth about Antarctica's past, whether it holds the ruins of a forgotten chapter or only the magnificent works of geology and time, will ultimately be written by this rigorous, patient science. Yet, this does not diminish the adventure, it elevates it. Each drilling platform breaking through to an ancient lake, each submersible switching on its lights in the abyss, each radar pulse returning a new image of the buried world. These are the moments of genuine discovery. They represent humanity's enduring curiosity, applied with our greatest ingenuity to answer the oldest questions in our planet's coldest, quietest corner. The epic is not in the wild theory, but in the arduous, brilliant process of turning mystery into knowledge. We have journeyed from the faded ink of ancient portlands to the crisp digital pulses of modern radar. We have traced the lines of the Piri Reis map, soared over the phantom mountains revealed by ice-penetrating scans, and listen to the whispered legends of secret bases and hollow earths. We have watched as global warming, that unintended archaeologist, begins to pull back the icy veil in real time. The verdict, at least for now, is both humbling and exhilarating. No smoking gun has emerged from the frost, no undeniable city, no inscribed artifact held aloft by a gloved hand has yet been presented to shatter the textbooks. The grand theories of a lost human civilization on Antarctica remain in the realm of compelling speculation, locked in a stalemate with a scientific timeline measured in tens of millions of years. Yet, to dismiss the mystery here would be to miss the entire point. Antarctica was never just a potential archaeological site. It is the planet's ultimate mystery box, a continent-sized capsule of unanswered questions. It holds the tangible truth of ancient, fossilized forests and the tantalizing possibility of a shadow biosphere in its sunless lakes. It guards both the cosmic history that falls from the sky in meteorites and the earthly history that may be crushed beneath its glaciers. Its greatest power is not in what it has revealed, but in what it still withholds. It is the last great terra incognita, a blank space that refuses to be fully filled, forcing our imaginations to work, our science to advance, and our curiosity to burn. So stay curious, question the maps, question the myths, but most importantly, follow the science. It is the patient drill, the sterile submersible, and the next generation radar that will slowly, methodically peel back the ice. The final chapter of this frozen epic is being written not in speculation but in data. The journey is far from over. What you believe is waiting in the deep freeze. Share your most compelling theory in the comments below and subscribe to join us as we explore the next great historical mystery.